Yeah, Streets of Light podcast. Chris Anthony with you. Beautiful Tuesday afternoon here in cloudy Southern California. I'm excited to come to you again on another topic that I think will be beneficial for the mind stuff, that mental world that we live in. And so today, we're going to be talking about stillness of the mind. That's right, stillness of the mind. Man, what a topic. Stillness of mind is so hard to achieve in this day and age. And I think that with our lifestyles the way they are, with social media, with Netflix streaming series and all the things that we can get involved in, I think it's really hard to focus and have stillness of mind. I want to start out with a quote for you. And this is going to lay the foundation of the discussion. I have Sarah Leist on with me today. She'll be with us in just a few minutes, so hang on there. And I want to read you this quote that really, as I was, a lot of us that are spiritual seekers in the morning time, we do whatever we do. We do maybe a little yoga, a little meditation, maybe a Bible study, whatever, depending on where we're coming from. And so this morning I was reading and I came across this amazing quote and I wanted to read it to you. It was shattering for me, to kind of shake me up, awaken me to focus again on stillness. And this is what it said: "So long as problems occupy the mind, there is little opportunity for mental and spiritual freedom, for these cannot coexist with mental turmoil. The mind should be cleared of confusing moods, worries, and fears, so that in the sky of mental calmness, the liberated bird of paradise, the soul, can soar and spread its wings over one's whole existence." I thought, wow. That is just amazing, because I don't know about you, but do problems ever occupy your mind? I mean, we have a lot of things to potentially worry about. And what this is saying is that when problems occupy the mind, there's not much opportunity for freedom. And these worries that create turmoil, they don't lead us down good paths. So this is something that's hit home a lot for me, because I have one goal. I have that goal of stillness and peace and tranquility. I'm a spiritual seeker, so I want to experience the divine. I want to experience God. I want to experience all the things that I can in this human body. And so stillness of mind. And the hard thing about this is, how do we get there? And that's a very, very good question. And then we have so many people that are coming from so many different backgrounds. It could be hard to just give one particular formula, because we all have different fortes, right? When it comes to our spiritual, practice, our spiritual progress. So what I'd like to do right now is I would like to have Sarah Leist chime in, because the first thing I would like to, Sarah, are you with me?
Hi, Chris. Can you hear me?
Okay. Sorry.
I'm taking myself off speaker here. There
okay.
we go.
That's good. I had to push one more button, so I caught you mid-sentence anyway. So I guess what I wanted to do is start out with talking to you about your own spiritual practice. My understanding, if I remember right, is you come from a Christian background. Am I right?
Sort of. Yes.
Sort of. Okay.
Sort of.
so I, like I said in the intro, we're all coming from different places, and mm-hmm. I think it's really helpful for people to hear, about others' practices and what resonates with them. I come from a very fundamental Christian background, which for me meant that I had to be, very careful about, what kind of practices I let in my own spiritual life. But then as time went on and as I grew a little bit older and I read more and more, sacred texts around the world, I sort of decided that even my own scriptures that I was reading, the Bible said things like, be still and know that I am God. Things like that let me know how important it was, to find stillness. So tell me a little bit. I know when I asked you about this, you said, well, that's not your specialty. That makes me want to ask you. So what do you do? What do you do?
So that's a great question, Chris. And when you ask me, did I come from a Christian background? So the answer is yes, but the answer is also no. So I guess I'll start there. So my family is of Jewish descent, and we converted to Christianity back in probably the 1800s. And so my family is Protestant, and I was raised as a Protestant, but I was also raised by my mother's side of the family, and my mother's side of the family is also Native American.
Okay.
And my mother was very involved in spirituality in terms of, more like a pagan sense of spirituality.
Interesting.
So I grew up that way. And so I had a very, not in the form of like a witch type of paganry, but in the form of, like Native American type of spirituality that I grew up with. And then as I got older, I was raised by, my extended family. Sorry, I was checking on my kids. I was raised by my extended family who were Christians. And so they put me, through, catechism and church and things like that. And so I
So when you say catechism, do you mean the Catholic Church then, or was it more like a Methodist
Lutheran.
or Lutheran? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Lutheran. Yeah. So one step off of Catholic. Yes.
Okay.
So I had, a traditional Christian background as well. And then as I went to college, which ironically, I actually went to a Christian college, I actually studied religion when I was in college, and I read a bunch of other sacred texts. And one of my most influential classes that I took was a Chinese philosophy and culture class.
Okay.
And we studied Buddhism, we studied Hinduism, Confucianism, and Taoism.
Mm-hmm.
And, through those types of spiritual philosophies, I guess you would call them, you kind of get this sense of peace and spirituality through those as well. And you kind of realize that they're all kind of interconnected, almost like they come from the same divine source.
Yes. I like that you say that, because I know we talked about, in the last time you were on the podcast, we had some discussions, and I thought, oh yeah, okay, that's definitely a Christian background, which I think that the challenge is sometimes when you're in spiritual organizations that are more fundamental, based organizations, sometimes they can get so tough on, the folks that are involved in those organizations that it's easy to become bitter against any spiritual any spiritual group that, let's say, maybe hindered. Maybe as you look back, sometimes can be the sad thing about different spiritual groups, is sometimes you look back and you go, wow, they kind of hurt me more than they helped me. But even though that happened in my situation, I still don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater, because like what you said is so important. I think all the groups, for the most part, are kind of talking about the same thing. They just use different words to explain it. Yes, it sounds like you have. It sounds like you have a little one. So
I do, yeah.
As you have a little one, approaching, and that's okay. I can say one or two more things while you take care of that. So
okay,
I guess for me, stillness has become such a gift, and it was not really promoted to me from spiritual leaders in my background. So as I've discovered it in my mid-50s, I'm kind of excited that it can be so simple yet so powerful. And stillness is such a great gift. And it's something that seems to be so hard to come by that so many of us just give up, completely. And some of the most amazing spiritual realizations and experiences that I've had in my own life have been during prolonged periods of stillness. So I think it's super important for anyone on a spiritual path to at least, even if it's not part of the sort of the menu or what's been laid out in your own spiritual background. I think it's so important for us to find that. And like you said, so many different traditions really do.
Absolutely. And I think, opening your mind to various traditions also helps you gain that sense of peace and different methods by which you can connect with the divine as well. So for example, in, traditional Christian church cultures, for example, you connect with the divine by going to church or by praying. And, in some other traditions, you might do that by meditating or doing yoga or going for a walk in nature or, doing various things to still your mind, to clear your mind, to deal with things that, you need to deal with. And then, connecting to the divine through, those various ways to still your mind.
Yes. Yes. And so, and then I start to see the common threads. Like I was, when I was in my church life, one of the things that I used to do is play music, and that was kind of a way to sort of seek God or to have spiritual experience. And we would sing songs in just regular Christian, worship settings, small groups, and I found that I was at times just caught up to another place and had these outpourings of spirit upon me and the other people that were, we were all together. We had a spirit of unity and oneness that can't be described with words. You just felt so united in those times when things were happening. And then I realized as I was watching this documentary on yoga that there's a tradition called bhakti, and they were doing one whole documentary on bhakti within yoga. And I realized how many parallels there was to my own experience in Christianity with bhakti, and they sing kirtan chants and so on and so forth. But they started describing, how they felt and what the goal was or what the results were. And I was just amazed, and I thought about my background and some of the people who say, oh, those people over there, they're not, they're, and this happens a lot. I hate to bring it up, but it does happen. And people say, oh, those people over there, yeah, they're not good with God or they're not going to heaven or whatever. And then I realized, oh my goodness, there's so many people from so many different traditions having the same experience. And yet sometimes there's this feeling of, oh, they're different over there. They're not like us. And, I can't quite relate to them. So anyways, I guess there's been some sadness in my heart over that, because I realize we really are a lot closer than we think. Now, let me ask you this. You said did you say it was your grandmother who was Jewish or?
Yeah, my grandfather's side is Jewish.
And was anyone on your grandfather's side into Kabbalah?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. They keep it kind of hidden because we're from Germany, and so my family kind of keeps that part of our heritage actually hidden.
Yeah,
because of that.
I can understand that, and that's sad because it's been so long. But it was such a deeply affecting situation where so many people are still, just don't talk about it.
Right. Exactly.
And so. Tell me about, so you said that someone was into more of like a spiritualism or something that was a little more, I don't know, I want to say kind of out there. Did you say something like that?
I did. Yeah. My mother's side of the family is Native American.
Okay.
And so my mother practiced Native American spirituality.
That is pretty cool. I've always wanted to know more about that. I mean, a lot of us sage our house in this day and age, or we you go to Sedona or whatever, and you kind of feel that vibe out there. Have you been to Sedona, by the way?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have. Yeah. I grew up in the Southwest. So.
Oh, okay. Okay. So like that to me, like Sedona is like such a cool place because not only is it a place where, like American Native culture is predominant, and you've got the sage and the crystals and everything, but it really does feel like a vortex to me. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like as far as the vortex thing, it's just amazing.
It's like you get immersed in the culture a little bit.
Yeah.
Even without realizing that you're in it.
Yeah, and it feels powerful. When I go there, I always feel like I feel like I'm a little bit more aware, a little more awake, a little bit lighter. And you have to
Mm-hmm.
wonder, would that wear off after you were there for a while? Because I always wondered if it's like, people who live there, do they still feel that uplifting, or does that just become the new norm? That's a good question. But
That is a good question. I don't know.
yeah, but the Native American culture is very interesting to me, just because there's like a kind of like a shamanic, side to, the American Native culture. And
Mm-hmm.
I've always been fascinated, because one of the things that I've been doing is I've been doing a little bit of energy work for people who need it, more like people who are really in need of help. And usually one thing I do after doing an energy session with someone is I will do like a guided meditation. And I
Mm-hmm.
noticed that when people go through a guided meditation, a lot of times after an energy session, they're so relaxed that they will see things that they've never seen in their life. They'll see a scene that's like a heavenly scene. Sometimes it has, like a woods kind of like backdrop, or, sometimes they'll see, maybe someone who's passed away, but it appears to them as younger and happy. And I'm fascinated by, I'm not so interested in the psychoactive ceremonies like, ayahuasca or anything like that. I'm not so much interested in that, but I am interested in the shamanic gift of people going on a journey, and then people, a lot of times assimilating something that they lost. And that might actually be a good topic for us before we kind of transition into the other segue,
Sure.
because the shamanic gift is about returning something to someone that was lost. For example, like if you were a kid and someone in your family said to you, "Oh, you can't sing," when you were like, singing one day in the living room or something, you might, like the Four Agreements says, you might sort of agree with them on that, and then just sort of shut down in that whole area. And then the rest of your life, like when you're with your friends and everyone's singing, you might feel self-conscious about singing. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do. I apologize. I have a crying baby in the back.
Oh, that's okay. So I guess what I'm talking about is sometimes in our life experience, sometimes something will happen that makes us agree with someone on something that may not be true. For, the example is,
Mm-hmm.
that, someone says, "Oh, you can't sing." And then you carry that with you and you don't even realize that you're carrying that with you. It's almost like a spell, like, like a curse, it's like you believe something that someone said, and it might've been totally unfounded, or you might've just been a little kid singing and having fun and being silly, but sometimes people will say things early in life and you carry those things with you. And then the next thing you know, now you've got a complex. Now you've got this sort of presupposition of, you've got sort of a presupposition that that I can't sing, that I will never sing, and I won't have fun with my friends when they're singing. And it just seems to me that that these kind of like things that happen early in our life sometimes can really affect, how we behave as adults. And so, I was thinking about that because we're going to talk about bringing thoughts into captivity and voiding triggers, right?
Yes. I feel like the divine is talking to me through you right now. um, this is actually an issue that I deal with personally. I am a musician,
Oh, you are?
and I am, yeah, I am a musician, and it's part of my mission on my journey.
Okay.
Um, and I struggle with this because when I was young, I used to sing all the time, and everybody told me to be quiet. And
We have to
so
tell people who are listening that I had no idea that this was the case. I mean, I just threw that out there. And you had kids running around at the same time, so
I did.
I had no idea if you could even pay attention to what I was saying. So that's crazy that happened, though. That actually happened to you.
Yes. Yep. So when I was younger, it happened on multiple occasions. I had a music teacher that wasn't super supportive of some of his students, me included. And I had, just people like telling me like, "Hey, can you not sing all the time? You can't really carry a tune." And so, I developed a complex about it.
Oh my gosh.
When I was little, and like now that I'm older, I have a very deep singing voice, so I have a big complex about it, right? I'm very self-conscious of it.
So you're not a soprano.
Well, actually, I have two ranges. So I have a soprano range, but I also have a contralto range, and it's deeper than Janis Joplin. So
Wow.
it makes people give me a funny look when I start singing. So I'm very self-conscious of it, but it brings me back to that that state of people criticizing or saying something, and it's hard to calm that in your mind when you're trying to make music and do things not only that make you happy, but things that you feel like is your calling, and trying to shut that off, and still your mind and focus on what you need to do.
Yeah. So do you said that you did some music for a living? Is that what you said? Or no?
I don't do it for a living. I just I do it for fun.
Just for fun. Okay. Okay.
Yep, it's a hobby of mine. But yeah, it's part of my TF mission
Okay. So
to be a musician.
so here's the thing. Did you ever read The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz?
I have, actually. It's been
Yeah.
a while. It's been about 10 years since I read it. So
Yeah. So
don't ask me to quote it. But
yeah,
yes, I have.
no. That doesn't surprise me because yeah, right. So that's a good point. It's been out there for a while, but it's kind of hung in there, and it's something that I think a lot of people still think about and talk about. And it's like, what happened to you was, like when you were younger, you had this, this dialogue going on from a voice teacher and so on and so forth, and you picked up on that, and it was energetic, probably more than anything. Probably, if you went back to it, it probably wasn't so much your, I'm just guessing, and it makes me wonder if it probably wasn't so much your voice, but it was just an energetic thing. Like sometimes people pick favorites, or they pick on you for whatever reason. It might be their own thing. You might remind them of someone that they had a bad experience with, or whatever it is. But
Right.
the interesting thing, according to the Four Agreements, is if this happens to you and you sort of agree with it, then you have this thing. And the question is how to break these agreements. And I actually feel like, our topic today, which is stillness, is super important for that, because if you practice stillness, then when these thoughts come in, like, oh, I can't sing, or the emotions that accompany that come in, you can see it for what it is. It's just like an ego story of like, oh, people don't think I have a good voice, or whatever it is. And sometimes if you catch that before you embrace it and go into that world, into that emotional world, you can actually just realize it for what it is. It's a false thing. And
Right.
and even me, I don't sing very good in key. I had a voice teacher who said, look, you're always a little flat. And she said it very nicely. She said, you're always a little flat, so you need to sing a little bit higher than you think. And that's just because the way my ears are, I can't hear my voice very good. So anyways, I mean, it's like, but even that, even though she said it with grace, I've always struggled with, that feeling too, that, oh, I'm not a good enough singer or whatever. But the truth is when you're in that space, when you're just accepting yourself and forgiving yourself and really giving yourself mercy. And that's what I've loved about the yoga practice, because you learn how to treat your body with care and respect. And, you give yourself mercy, you give yourself grace, you give yourself a little room to be human, to maybe not sing on key. That's okay. To maybe have a couple extra pounds or not look a certain way. That's okay. It's about accepting who you are. And then when that story pops up again, not identify it. So talk to me a little bit about what you know about the triggers and that sort of thing, because it sounds like you've had a little bit of thought or background in that area.
Absolutely. So what we were kind of discussing earlier basically has to do with more of like deep trauma triggers that might pop up, but it's the same thing, whether it's you know um, you having a moment of self-doubt and self-consciousness when you're singing, or something triggers, an abandonment wound in you, being able to recognize what it is and, just accept it for what it is and accept yourself for the way you are, and just sit in it, deal with it, and let it go. Being able to let it go, being able to meditate on it, and, let it go like little clouds passing out of your brain.
Right. So
And
how does the cognitive behavioral therapy, how does that work with identifying triggers?
so that's a great question. So I guess I'll go back. So in my past, I have a lot of abandonment and rejection trauma from being an orphan. And so something that I struggle with throughout my life is anytime that I feel abandoned or triggered, I react to it. And my personal reaction is anger, because I have difficulty processing my emotions for abuse reasons when I was a child as well. And so that reaction, has consequences. And so learning how to recognize how things affect me and how things, trigger these abandonment wounds. So things such as, sorry, I have a child.
I love that. I love that. Woo-hoo-hoo in the background. That's cool.
They're fighting right now. So she's got a scowl on her face.
Oh no, as long as she doesn't have like a weapon in her hand or something.
Yeah, no, they're fine.
That's good.
They're just fighting. So, being able to recognize how things trigger you. For example, one of the things that I would talk about with my therapist when I was in therapy has to do with, my mother loss. I was an orphan at 12, and my father wasn't in my life either. So, I struggled with this on my own and without a lot of help from extended family. And she's a spaghetti mess at the moment. So, that's something that I struggled with growing up. And now, anytime I feel abandoned by someone or even something, I have a reaction to it.
Yeah.
So, for example, when my computer isn't working, I realized that I react a certain way because I feel like my computer abandoned me subconsciously, of course.
Yeah, that's.
So being able to. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's really deep. But go on, because I want to come back to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So being able to recognize it, and I had told my therapist, I struggle with anger problems, and she said, I want you to go back in your childhood, and I want you to write down all the times that you remember feeling the way that you feel right now, because it stems from childhood.
Yeah.
And it's really important to look back. Anything that you are feeling now as an adult when you were triggered is how you felt when you were younger.
Yeah.
And so digging deep into your childhood and figuring out when it was that you feel like that, when it is when you react like that, and figuring out, the common denominator there.
Yeah, I find that so interesting because, in my own personal experience, I found myself retracing certain patterns in relationships, and when I sat down and thought about it, I realized that a lot of the challenges that I was facing in my present day relationships somehow went back to previous scenarios when I was young, and a lot of them were big deals, in a kid's life, and even from I think adult perspective. And so it's interesting to think about. And I know there's some friends out there from Quora, some friends in the Twin Flame group. And I really do feel like this is something, they always say, and I don't think it's just, relationships with twins. I think it's in relationships with anyone, that sometimes you're being forced to over and over again face your childhood trauma, and to sort of overcome, or at least face that trauma and then overcome it, because it's really hard to progress to another level until you get rid of those traumas. And so,
Exactly.
yeah, so that's something that you've been working on then with your therapist in your life.
Yep, I have. And just being able to recognize that's what it is. Able to recognize the pattern, being able to recognize the trigger, being able to take it for what it is. So for example, when someone, you know, say for example, my my ex-husband would promise me that he was going to do something and then he wouldn't do it, and I would just go through the roof about it. And you sit down and you realize, oh, I feel this way. I'm really upset with him because I feel abandoned. And you sit down and you think about it and you're like, okay, he's not abandoning me because he didn't take out the trash. So being able to reshape your thoughts, being able to take a different perspective on it, and then let it go. Being able to say, okay, this happened to me, but I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become.
Right. And that's to me, this is why we're doing that today. I mean, if anyone's listening and they're not getting anything, this is what you need to get. What you just said, like today, right now, no matter what happened in your past, no matter how you felt about, your parents and their, a lot of us deal with abandonment issues, maybe not like you, but, no matter what you feel about your parents, your past girlfriends, boyfriends, spouses, whatever, or bad things that happened to you, even if you felt like life dealt you a heavy blow and a bad hand, no matter what has happened in the past, you have one objective right now, and that's to be totally awake, totally aware, and not only present in this moment, but free from all the chains of your past. And that is such a huge challenge. I mean, that quote I read to you was from Paramahansa Yogananda, and what I loved about it was he said, he said, so long as these problems occupy the mind, there's very little opportunity for mental and spiritual freedom. They, because those two things, mental and spiritual freedom, cannot coexist with mental turmoil. And then he basically goes on to say that the mind really needs to be cleared of these moods that are conflicted and confusing. It needs to be cleared of the worries and the fears. Why? In order that the sky of mental calmness will house that liberated bird of paradise, which is the soul. So your soul now in the calm space begins to soar and spread its wings over your whole existence. And I don't know about you, Sarah, but in my goal as a spiritual seeker, that doesn't happen too much. But when it does, and if it's happened to you, and if there's anyone listening and it's happened to them, that once you get a taste of that, once you get a taste of that freedom, of that disassociation from a painful, like egoic past or a former reality, which actually isn't a reality anymore, whenever you get a moment of freedom away from that, there's something about your being that seems just downright next to divine. And it's like, once you taste that, I mean, I don't think many people can taste that and then not get on the quest to like find it again.
Taste it some more.
Yes. Yes. I mean, don't you agree?
You know what they call that?
What do they call that?
You know what they call that?
What do they call it?
They call that 5D.
Yeah, 5D.
When you are close to the divine.
Yeah, I like that. And 5D is like, I mean, maybe this would be another interesting little segue we can go away from, because, when I think about, wow, things from the past and being dragged down and triggers of emotional trauma, I can't think of a better thing to talk about coming out of that. We know that's a reality. We know that many of us struggle with that. So I can't think of a better thing to talk about other than 5D. So some people are out there going, what the heck? Because you're saying 5D. Well, we live in this 3-dimensional world, and life is just as it is. But 5D. What would be? Why don't you give me your definition of that, Sarah?
5D is basically the lowest realm of heaven. So it's when you let go of all of the earthly and matrix logical, what you may consider to be reality, and just let it go and get yourself closer to the divine.
Yes.
So when you bring yourself closer to the divine, whether it's through meditation or prayer or going for a walk in nature. That's my form of meditation. I really like to go for walks through nature. And, anything that brings you closer to God, closer to your spiritual self, and letting things go is what elevates you into this realm of heaven on earth.
Yes. I kind of feel like that is, it's a, I feel like it's a frequency, more than a place, because I know a lot of times we're so spatial as human beings. I mean, even spiritual groups talk about, oh, that's where heaven is and that's where God is. And it seems to be thought of as a place, but it seems like this.
It's all around us.
It's all around us. And that's what the masters have always said. I mean, that's what Jesus kept saying. Hey, the kingdom of heaven is near you. It's all around you, it's even within you. But it's like we think of heaven as a place more than we think of it as a state of mind, a state of being.
Right.
And I was reading this, I was reading this definition by Yasmin Ibrahim, and she was talking about how the 5D, the D refers to a level of consciousness, in that dimension. And so, globally humans have been in this sort of 3D level of consciousness for quite a while, which is represented, by feelings of fear and limitations, this sort of lack of interconnectedness. She also goes on to say, suffering, working hard to succeed, and being locked in time and space. You ever felt that? You felt in prison in a job, or you're like in the rat race, kind of like the Matrix movie where the guy's, just working in this like world it's not even real. It's a figment of, it's a software program. It's a figment of imagination. But she goes on to talk about how all these people have started shifting into a higher state of consciousness. Now, there's a lot of people who believe that has to do with Schumann resonance. That's something that, people who are listening can look that up. I ran into a guy who was talking about that, and he had kind of a science background. He's like, no, it's a real thing, that the earth kind of has this resonance, and you look at it. And it's funny, if you actually download a little app to kind of track the Schumann resonance, what you will find is when you feel like you're in a 5D state, when you feel like you're in this heavenly state, a lot of times if you go back and look at this Schumann resonance, you will find that the numbers are higher. It's like the earth is resonating at a different sort of frequency.
At a higher vibration?
At a higher vibration. It's actually literally a higher hertz. I think normally the earth resonates around between 7 and 8 hertz. And so, Yasmin is talking about, she's kind of like an intuitive guide, and she's talking about how she feels like a lot of humans have been shifting into this higher state of consciousness, into 5D. And when she talks about it, it's a state that feels effortless. And I like that. Also it's something that we have a hard time experiencing unless we surrender that, our stories, like that's our little mental constructs of, and it doesn't mean that we didn't come from somewhere, or we were wrong in, sort of defining where we came from or thinking about it in that sense. But what she talks about is how we have to kind of surrender the old story and being open to being, in a new, sort of world, which is the 5D world.
Right.
So she has symptoms like you'll have some ringing in the ears. I've had that. Waking up at, in the 2 to 4 a.m. range. They used to call that the witching hour. I don't know. I think we should rename that, because that just sounds a little, not that I have friends who are, they practice, white witchcraft or whatever, but I think the witching hour, I know, I don't know. But 2 to 4 waking up. And that is when the veil between, this physical and spiritual world is really close. That's when I woke up, and if I was talking to God, I was like, man, he's right there. He's right in my ear right now,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, waking up at the witching hour, dreaming, vividly, particularly, about people on the other side and things like that. Some people talk about other things like headaches and dehydration and dizziness, and so those would be some of the symptoms. But let's face it, once you've experienced the good side of it, you're like, whatever, I'll experience a little ringing in my ears.
I'll take the headache.
Yeah, I'll take a headache. And it may be that scientifically they'll be able to go back at some point and say, this is why this was happening. The earth was resonating at a different frequency, and it's like you dive down in the water and you go to a different pressure level and you feel pressure on your ears. I mean, why wouldn't that? I mean, people think this stuff is crazy and new agey, but no. I mean, when you dive underwater, you expect your ears to feel pressure. Why wouldn't you expect to feel pressure if the resonance of the earth is changing,
Right. Or is the resonance of the earth changing because everybody's vibrating at a higher frequency themselves?
I think that people have a lot to do with it. And this is going to be, I don't know, I'm going to throw this out there. What do you think about, I know we talk about the ills of social media, but what do you think about the possibility that social media itself could be, even though it has its negative sides, could be speeding the transition into 5D? Do you think that's a possibility? Be honest now.
Maybe to a certain extent, but honestly, I actually feel more. I actually have higher vibes now that I am not involved in social media anymore.
Right.
I stopped looking at social media, and all of a sudden, my life is lighter, and I stopped looking at the news, and suddenly, life seems a lot better when you're not watching the catastrophes throughout the world. It raises your vibes quite a bit.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like for me, like news is pretty much a no for the most part. I guess what I was thinking on social media, and just tell me what you think. I think that it has brought to light, I know that sometimes news media is polarized against each other, the different factions, and they're trying to promote this over that. But I do feel like the one blessing, the light that's in social media, is that it makes us, like right now, I mean, even though, we're streaming live on YouTube, but even though, and we could be on Facebook if I got my bug worked out here, we could be Facebook and YouTube at the same time. But the point, I'll get that worked out one day. But the point is we can have a lot of positivity going on. I mean, I interviewed Yolandi last time, and she was in Australia, and then someone could have like tuned into the podcast in India, and then they could have called in and shared some great new information that was liberating with us and then our viewers. So it just seems to me like, I just feel like it connects the world. And yeah, we could talk about the negative side, and it's there, the addiction to like, looking at my Facebook page, looking at pictures of myself, looking at comments about, I get that. But anyways, yeah, I'm fascinated by how social media might be actually speeding the acceleration. So you touched on something interesting, and maybe you have something to share about that. So you think that we as a people are creating, it could be the earth resonating at a different hertz, but in this human resonance, but you think that perhaps as a people of the earth, that we could be ushering in this sort of new era?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think once you start healing from all the damages that have been wrought upon us from the past, and start healing all those wounds and breaking the cycles for future generations, in addition to yourself, and vibrating at this higher frequency, vibrating in this 5D area where you have let go of the things that have been traumatic for you and decide, what? I'm not going to let this define me. I'm going to become this person that I want to be, and I'm going to go out into the world and do some good for the world with what I have learned about my own journey. And I'm going to go out there and I'm going to use this information and my experience to empathize with other people and help lift them up. So yes, absolutely. I think especially people that, are out there on these missions to, bring up the vibrations of other people as well. Certainly, bring up the vibration of the world so that, it spreads like a wildfire.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I would be honest with you, Sarah, like 3-4 years ago, if maybe a little bit longer, maybe it was like 5 to 7, if I would have heard you talking about raising vibration, I might have thought, that's kind of new agey. I don't know. It sounds like pseudoscience to me, or something like that. But
welcome to the new age.
The funny thing is though, is let's just, outside of the scientific experiments, let's just consider it for a second. Like if for example, if you're cheery, if you get up in the morning and your heart is filled with gratitude, and you begin to recount things that you have that are positive and good, we know that uplifts your state of mind, your state of being. And we're all energy, and energy is all vibrating. Oh, totally. And all energy is vibrating. So there's no doubt, even if there was no science to back it, that it would behoove you to practice it and to uplift other people, because when we uplift other people, we uplift ourselves as a community. It just makes sense, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, they're going off over there.
Well, here's some uplifting. My children playing.
Yeah,
there's some
well, we need to, we need to be
sounds for you.
We need to be more like that. We need to be more like, I don't care if mom's doing a podcast right now. We're playing,
We're playing in the front yard. We're just running.
Yeah, we're just running free.
And we're covered in spaghetti.
That's you can watch them off. No one sees them. It's not like, there was an article that came out that was titled "The Hippies Were Right. It's All About Vibrations, Man," and they go on to explain, how this works. And it's so funny because, I don't know, I think you're a little bit younger than me, but I was born in the 60s, and in the early 70s, I still remember adults talking like, "Ooh, bad vibrations, man," and that was just like the way people talked back then. But everyone just thought, oh, those are a bunch of degenerate hippies, That's what people thought. They didn't take them seriously, They were singing songs like "The Age of Aquarius," and they were walking around barefoot with long hair and free love and all that. But the truth is that there is evidence support.
They're playing with dragons.
Yeah, it sounds like they're going crazy over there. It sounds like they're raising their vibration. Yeah, but there's
they're destroying wagons.
Yeah, it's it is interesting. There is actually science behind the electrical oscillations in different regions of the brain that they measure with electrodes that they put on the outside of the skull, and they've looked at the different waves, like the gamma waves, like are 30 to 90 cycles per second, like hertz, and then theta are just like 4 to 7. And so on and so forth. So they've done all these studies on it, and like, there's certain brainwaves that are significantly slower, but they work together to facilitate this relationship between electrical brain patterns. And so, the whole consciousness thing it hasn't been solved. It may never be by science, but it's still up for debate. But it doesn't mean, we know that there's evidence that raising your own vibration and will affect you positively. It'll help your body be more healthy. It'll help you sleep better at night. It'll strengthen your immune system. And then the people around you, if you've ever been around someone who was always, I don't know if you've ever been around someone who was always like kind of like doom and gloom.
Like a ray of sunshine?
The opposite. Oh, well, yeah, that too. Hopefully that. Yeah. Have you ever been, well, let's talk about the cloudy. Have you ever been around a cloudy person?
Oh, yes.
Oh my gosh. I like Switchfoot. Switchfoot's a Christian band, and in this one song, he goes, maybe I'm the one who's cloudy. Maybe I'm the chance of rain. And what that's about is what? It's about waking up to like, are you dragging people down? Are you the cloudy one? Maybe you're the chance of rain. And, but then tell me about the ray of light. Have you ever been around a ray of light person? I lost you there. Are you there? Oh, there you are.
Sorry, I have children requesting to play in the car.
You had to mute it. So did you have a ray of light person that you were around?
Yes. Well, I've had several. Some of them are my best friend, and then I have some other spiritual friends that are always emanating a very positive energy, and it's really hard not to always want to be around them to lighten your mood. And then also, I'm going to be honest, my twin flame is my ray of light.
Oh, that's so sweet. Tell me about that.
So
if you feel so, or maybe you feel like maybe he's going to find this. Maybe you don't want to say anything. I don't know.
Oh, he probably will. He's probably listening to me right now.
Is he just like psycho to find out what you're doing and where you're at and so on and so forth?
I don't know.
At least you hope so, right? Isn't that funny how we are as humans? We're like, well, I'm mad at him right now. Not that you're mad at him, but it's like,
Well,
I
we
still
are
hope
mad
he's
at
like,
each other, not
I hope he's stalking me anyways, right?
Well, actually, he's the awakened one. So yes, he is stalking me.
Wait a second. You can't say he's the awakened one if you're not awakened. You have to be
Oh
awakened to
no,
realize he's.
I am awakened as well. We are both awakened. We
Okay.
are both awakened. But I am traditionally under the nomenclature of the twin flame community. I am the matrix twin, the divine masculine, or the runner, so to speak. So he was always awakened ever since we met. So.
Tell me about. Let me ask you. So we talked about 5D, and we didn't really. I mean, I read a few definitions, which was probably unfortunate. Because can you tell me of an experience where you were living in 5D and he was there, and maybe even that he said something or did something in the morning that triggered that, and then do you have a beautiful 5D experience that you can remember where it just seemed like all of creation around you was like singing, or you know what I mean? You just had that feeling like it just doesn't get any better.
Yes. So, I mean, that's pretty much every time I'm with him. But the problem with runners, and I really want to stress this for any twin flame awakened chaser twins out there, is that something that happens with matrix twins when they're in 5D, when they come back down to earth because of a triggering event, or maybe they wake up the next morning and they don't quite remember, there's a big dissociation that goes on there.
Okay.
And I can't really explain it, but it's something that's happened to me. So, I'll have these 5D experiences with my twin, and I'll remember some of it, but not all of it.
Okay.
So I think that's really, really important to note, that, your runner twin may or may not remember your 5D experience.
That's
so
interesting.
all of those wonderful experiences that you have with your twin, those are God's gift to you. You get to experience those. Your runner can only experience those and get those back if they are ascended enough to remember them.
That's crazy, because let me just chime in, because a friend of mine was saying you got to do an episode on spiritual forgetfulness, and I've always felt like that is like a real thing. It's like spiritual Alzheimer's or something like that. Like,
right. Yeah, it's actually a sore spot with us right now.
Oh, it is, okay.
But
I didn't mean to do that. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. No worries. But yeah, as far as a 5D experience, I've had several 5D experiences with my twin. We, just to give people who are not familiar with my story a little rundown of our story, I guess. My twin and I actually went to kindergarten together.
Oh, wow.
And we were best friends in kindergarten.
Okay.
And then we were separated because I switched schools. And we were separated for about 7 years. 7 years is a crucial number. And I met him again in middle school at an arcade because he was hanging out with some friends who were friends with my friends, and they saw each other, and then we met each other in an arcade. And it was just like instant soul recognition. We looked in each other's eyes, and it was like everybody else in the room disappeared. It was only us. We were just staring at each other for like 10 minutes, not saying a word to each other, but we were having an entire conversation. And it was like, where have you been? Hello. And, it was an instant chemistry between us. And we hung out. We played a bunch of games and stuff for the rest of the day. Mind you, we were 13. And and then as I walked away, I remember looking back at him, and he was looking at me, and I said, oh, I just met my soulmate. And, you think, oh, you're 13 years old. Like, yeah, you don't even know what a soulmate is,
Right.
But it was this instant recognition with him. And about a month or so later, I saw him again at a football game, and it was the same thing. And after that, him and I became best friends, and, we fell in love with each other, and we would be so close to having a relationship. And then one of us would sabotage it, and we'd separate and go in circles, and then we'd see each other again, a month. We had a huge separation in high school that lasted a year. And we'd see each other again. We run into each other, and it was like the whole process started all over again. And after high school, we separated, went our own separate ways. In college, we had a misunderstanding that led to a really big separation as well, that we're kind of dealing with right now. But I never really understood why our relationship never worked. It was always very tumultuous, and I just couldn't understand why. Like, we had such deep feelings for each other, and we had this incredible connection that I didn't have with anybody else, but I couldn't understand why we couldn't make it work.
Yeah.
And he was always trying to tell me. He was always very spiritual, and we had like really, really in-depth conversations. I mean, I remember him asking me about my faith and my spirituality, and we'd have these really in-depth conversations about how God is in the stars, and just like these really deep philosophical questions and conversations when we were young. And he would always make comments that make sense now, but they did not make sense back then. I was always like, he said some really weird stuff to me sometimes.
That's because he was enlightened.
Right, exactly. But I was not. I was like totally matrix, like I have no idea what's going on, type scenario. And I think this is a really big thing to emphasize on this journey, is that your runner like often does not understand the dynamics between the twin flame journey. We don't understand that we're supposed to come back to you.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of times you feel ghosted by us. We feel ghosted by you as well.
Wow.
Because no one contacts each other. They just expect the other one to reach out. And especially when the dynamics are flipped, my twin is a male, but he is a divine feminine on the inside, and I'm a divine masculine on the inside. And so, it creates this dynamic as well, where, you have the scenario where you have these gender expectations as well on top of it, which makes it really difficult. And, but anyway, that's our story. Just a big background of it. But, my 5D experiences with him, involve some romantic moments. We used to sneak out and go to concerts together, so that was always a fun thing that we did, and we used to get in a lot of trouble for it. But I've had some 5D experiences where him and I are just together and snuggling and not doing anything sexual, just laying there and looking into each other's eyes and just feeling like heaven was all around me. I remember in, I think it was high school, I used to go to his games after or I used to go to his games because he was on the rival high school football team and basketball team, and so I was always cheering for the wrong team. But I would meet him afterwards, and I remember him walking towards me one time, and it was like he was glowing. He had this golden light around him, and he was smiling. He was like a big, huge ray of sunlight to me. And I remember hugging him, and it felt like I was close to God when he was holding me.
Yeah.
And that's how I've always felt when I'm with him, is that I'm, closer to God when I'm with him.
Have you ever
that's what a 5D experience is.
Have you ever had, what I wanted to try and do is, because this is a topic that goes on in, like some of the Quora forums, and that is that 5D is accessible, outside of the twin flame situation. I think this is a very interesting thing for me because, I'm always interested in what can we achieve, in this life, not to sound like negative or anything, but without the help of other people, just in case, just in case, And
right.
So this is a conversation I see all the time on Quora. I keep seeing people talking about, while you're in this phase where maybe you're not with that person or whatever, that the most important thing to find is 5D, and you can find it on your own. And I guess I wanted to say that, my experience is, like, a lot of the things that stand out to me in 5D have to do with nature, and have to do with, like, some of my best memories were just walking down the street, and everywhere you went, like whether it was, someone walking along a path with their dog, and then you go up and greet the dog or whatever it is. It just felt like, to me, like how I would describe 5D is it feels like all of creation, all of nature is like in this beautiful harmony. And when you're just around people who are strangers, you feel like you know them and they feel like they know you. And there's almost like this deeper understanding, like almost, not that you don't have to talk, but you know how like it is when people misunderstand you. Like I've been on the road before and some guy thought I didn't want to let him in or whatever, if you've ever had a misunderstanding like that and then someone gets angry and peels out or whatever, flips you off or whatever it is, you're like, what the heck, man? I didn't.
Everybody's in harmony.
Yeah. Yeah. So that feeling, that's what I've noticed. And I've noticed that it's a little bit more of a challenge maybe when you're not in that relationship situation. But what I've noticed is that it is obtainable. That 5D is something that I think that's what the sages talk about. That's what Jesus talked about when he talked about the kingdom of heaven. That's what, all these people who've come into the earth to teach us, how to find that path, and they've taught us that. And so it's a beautiful thing. And, I do think there's something to be said about the earth resonance and then all of us creating it together. But it's a little bit hard, for, someone, in a time when things are going against the tide, it's a little bit hard to find it when, like when COVID hit and all the news was bad and then we didn't even know how bad it was. And we were all in lockdowns. I remember Easter, I was watching, that famous tenor, what was his name? And he's a guy who can't, he's blind. I want to say his name. I want to say anyways, I can't think of it right now. But I remember watching him in Italy walk out and sing Amazing Grace. And it was like Easter morning. And they went from the town he was in Italy to like New York City to all these major cities, London. And it was kind of weird because the streets were empty. And I remember getting a little teary-eyed. And it was just because so many people were just in their homes and in locking down. But those are the times I think when it's harder to find 5D. Those are the times when, like when the whole of humanity is kind of going the other way, they're going in stress and worry. But the truth is, I think we can do it. We don't have to. We can do it. Is that your experience?
Yes, absolutely. Separation is an illusion.
Yeah. It's totally.
And when you say, when people don't per se have another person to lean on, and a pandemic is exactly one of those situations, or just being lonely in general, understanding that separation is an illusion and that your divine counterpart is with you always.
That's right. Whether in body or in spirit.
Separation is an illusion.
Yeah. Right.
In body or in spirit. And that's the beauty of 5D is you can have a 5D experience in the physical when you're actually physically with that person, but you can also have a 5D experience that involves their spirit being with you as well.
Yes.
And that's something that in the twin flame community that we talk about a lot is having 5D experiences, whether they're in your dreams or just elevating yourself to the point where you realize that there is no separation between you. Even if there's a physical separation, they are always right there, and you can always talk to them, and you can always lean on them, and they're always with you, no matter what. And that's why for those who are in the twin flame community that understand this feeling, when your runner runs and you feel their ghost around you, that is their spirit hanging out with you.
Yeah.
And separation is an illusion. That's them, even though physically they might be running or mentally, emotionally, but that is their energy staying with you.
I've always felt like the twin flame is the divine beloved. I've always felt like it was. This is my crazy theory. I wish like we had all these core. Facebook just launched a special thing for podcasting, and it's not live for everyone yet, but they're going to have like these, like, it's kind of like podcast rooms, so to speak. And I can't wait to get all the core people, because I have a theory And I wish we
What's your
had,
theory?
I wish we had, yeah, I wish we had a room full of Quora, all the gang, like the people who write, but then the people who just don't write and they're sad and they're just commenting or whatever. There's all these people, right? But I have a theory, and my theory is that the people, that we think that our twin is this other person, and it is. There's another person, and we have all these theories about split souls and all this stuff. But I really believe, my theory is that behind that other person and behind us is the divine beloved, and I believe that why it's happening is because there is a special manifestation of divine love and divine mind behind that person. And so it's kind of crazy to think about it, but what if the person that we're focusing on, what if what's really behind it, and what if we found out when we died, or the body ceased to live, that when we got there, what if we found out and we could just see it so clearly that, oh my gosh, that was the divine beloved who was loving me through that person, and I and my beloved are one. These are what all the texts, these are what like the guys like Rumi are speaking of, and Hafiz, and Solomon did it in Song of Solomon in the Old Testament. And I love what Yogananda went on.
All the books of the Bible.
Yeah, all the books of the Bible. Jesus, John the Baptist told his followers, he goes, "Hey, go follow him. He's the bridegroom. He's the groom. He's the one you want to unite."
He's the bridegroom.
Yeah.
Matthew 22.
Yeah, he's the bridegroom.
The marriage of spirit and soul.
Yeah. So I think, and what's interesting is, I'm going to back up. So that initial quote that I read, so long as problems occupy the mind, there's little opportunity for mental and spiritual freedom. These cannot coexist with mental turmoil. So I'm going to read this part again because he goes on to say something that's fascinating. The mind should be cleared of confusing moods, worries, and fears, so that in the sky of mental calmness, the liberated bird of paradise, the soul, can soar and spread its wings over one's whole existence. And then he goes on to say, ultimate freedom comes with the attainment of realization of yourself, as being connected to the divine. That one who has attained this realization enjoys the same freedom, the same divine consciousness and qualities that found perfect expression in these people who came to earth, like Jesus and Krishna and all these others. So to me, it's a powerful thing, because 5D may just be a snippet. It may just be a snapshot of that divine consciousness that comes upon us for that moment. And in that moment, like my best memories of 5D, in my own life, were walking down the street and seeing that baby look at me and smile at me like he knew me. And then when I smiled back, he smiled again or whatever. And then seeing that dog and it jumps up on you and licks you or whatever. And it's just like, I had this experience of this like heavenly world on earth. And I wonder if it's that universal consciousness that, as the Bible says, the mind of Christ, it's a powerful thing. And all I know is, again, once you get a taste of that, there ain't no turning back, man. It's like you're in for life. You can't just taste 5D and turn back to the lower parts.
Exactly.
What do you think? Okay, well, that's good. Thank you so much, Sarah, for sitting in with me and chatting. Is there anything else you wanted to put in there before we shut it down? Anything else you wanted to share or say?
Yeah, I just wanted to, kind of go along what you were saying about, your twin flame being your divine. Hold on just a second.
There's your divine counterpart right there. A child in a tree. That's just.
Hold on just a second. Yeah. We have a cherry tree out front, and they climb it. They're like 1.5 feet off the ground. Well, I'm coming.
At least they can't break their necks from 1.5 feet. Well, you wouldn't think they would be able to, but.
Well, you wouldn't think so, but All right. Down? All right, there you go. Good job. All right. Sorry about that. Yeah, just to, go along with what you were saying about, your divine beloved. I have my own personal beliefs based on my journey. And, for those who disagree, take it and leave it. But I agree with you that I do believe that it is our divine beloved. Come on.
Yes.
That it is our divine beloved, and our twin flame is our connection with the divine, and everyone has a twin flame. Not everyone is incarnated with their twin flame. And so everyone can be close to their twin flame because separation is an illusion and they are not separated from God. Their twin flame is part of them. And on that day, you will realize that I am in the divine is in me, and I am in you.
That is a great place to lead. I just love that. I am in God. God is in me. God is in my partner. Life is good. I mean, look at this. We get 5D. We get so much more. That's just the beginning. I don't know what's next. I don't know if there's a 60 or 70, but we're only going up from here. Sarah, thank you so much for joining me
You're
again.
very welcome.
I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
We'll catch you next time around. All right, you guys. Here we go. This is the Streams of Light podcast. I'm Chris Anthony, and we are going to try and get on a more regular schedule here. We're going to try and do Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Pacific time. Appreciate everyone who's joined us, and I want you to chime in. I'll be trying to do better monitoring chat and even put in the WhatsApp link so you can maybe call in. So thank you so much for joining us, and until next time, take care.